5 Live Formula One.
Hello there and welcome to the penultimate sprint race of the year. We're back at a circuit steeped in Formula One history, Interlagos, for round 21 of the World Championship. It's the Sao Paulo Grand Prix weekend, and coming your way today we've got qualifying for Sunday's Grand Prix, but before that we have 24 laps of racing to kickstart the day. It's Harry Benjamin with you in commentary with BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson and reigning F1 Academy champion Abby Pulling. Abby, I was bracing myself for strong winds, thunderstorms, an absolute deluge of rain. There was a bit of rain, but it's nowhere near as bad as we first thought it would be.
Exactly, it rained overnight and it almost looks dry now. All the drivers have opted for the slick tyre option, although splitting between medium and softs throughout the grid, but it's looking fairly dry. I thought it was going to be a bit more of a split with the intermediate, but the sun's come out a little bit. It's a little bit overcast, but it's much nicer than, as you say, we all thought.
Yeah, risk of rain now down to 30%. Air temperature 22.6 degrees, track temperature 25.1 degrees. It's quite humid though, humidity level up at 75%. So we may well get a bit of rain coming back at us for qualifying later on this afternoon. But certainly no one then taking that risk and going on the intermediate. But there is a little disparity, particularly between our pole sitter and the man who sits in second. It's Lando Norris for McLaren, who starts on sprint pole. He's opted for the medium tyre. Kimi Antonelli, with a brilliant performance on Friday, has opted for the soft tyre in that Mercedes to try and get himself perhaps a little extra grip at the start. But Andrew, it's been a good start to the weekend for Lando Norris. 8 points up for grabs, and every point matters now in this championship fight.
Well, they're so close, aren't they? Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, 1 point between them after Norris's win in Mexico City 2 weeks ago. Max Verstappen 36 points off the lead. Interestingly, on the tyres, Harry, it's basically alternating throughout the top 8, medium soft, medium soft, medium soft, medium soft, all the way down. That's Norris, Antonelli, Piastri, Russell, Alonso, Verstappen, Stroll and Leclerc, which is obviously the ones on softs are hoping for a good launch off the line and the extra grip, especially in these slightly damp conditions. Can the medium drivers hold on? Of course, the soft on Verstappen's car, that betrays his need to gain places, because he's the one who can't really afford to finish where he starts in the sprint in terms of losing points in the championship, whereas Piastri probably can.
Yeah, Max Verstappen, we know, loves a sprint race, and we know he particularly loves this circuit as well. Does the 3-time Grand Prix winner around this track, but he is a little bit in that almost danger zone, isn't he, Abby? He's got a couple of cars surrounding him. He's got a bit to lose, not as much as say an Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris, but he can smell a 5th world title if he can get a result across this weekend.
I think him and the team really believe it, but they are taking it, as they always say, race by race, and this is another instance of that. He's not in the best position. He's surrounded in a busy area, and he could get unfortunately tapped or knocked, and that could be quite detrimental to his championship fight. So we'll see how it goes, but these are the conditions that Max revels in. It's mixed conditions, a little bit of damp throughout the track. He's always the one that manages to find where all the grip is.
And the run up to turn 1 as you sort of plunge downhill into the centre S's, and actually the start finish straight, the grid is actually pitched up slightly, isn't it? So there is an elevation there that is another obstacle to overcome. So how are you attacking those first couple of corners in these type of conditions?
I think it's really important to get as much tyre temp as possible on that formation lap. For them, the grid position is mixed between all of them. Some of them have a drier grid spot than others, so the launch is going to be really, really pivotal. We're going to see, I think, some slow starters, which is going to make for an exciting turn 1. But it's keeping your nose clean. If you've not got that front axle in the window, you're going to be really prone to lockups on that damp, especially on the inside, on that damp surface. The tyre's just not going to bite.
Well, the wind, I think, has picked up a tad as we approach lights out for the sprint race. Final preparations being made to the 18 cars on the grid. We'll run you through the entire grid in full. There'll be 18 on the start-finish straight. 2 will be going from the pit lane. 5 different pole sitters for all 5 of the sprint races we've had so far. It's been a good start to the weekend for the likes of Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri in 3rd as well, looking a little more encouraging this weekend. The pace is there, but he again is in that tricky situation. He needs to attack, but it's a sprint race as well, so you've got to remember the big points are on Sunday. But this could be a championship that is decided by finishing first or second in a sprint and the point difference.
Exactly, the margin over the weekend has definitely improved, especially from the previous weekends, but he still has more to find. Starting third, Oscar is, he's going to have to navigate his way. Hope that Lando makes a mistake, I think, because the momentum that he's got at the moment is unmatched, really. Obviously, last time out in Mexico, winning by 30 seconds and then topping FP1, P1 in quali. He's the man to beat at the moment, and it's going to be really tough for Oscar.
Well, as they set off on the formation lap and get their up-to-date data on how the track is performing, let's take you through how they line up for this, the 5th of 6 sprints this year. Lando Norris starts on pole. Alongside him is the Mercedes driver Kimi Antonelli, with Oscar Piastri in third. George Russell is fourth, with Fernando Alonso putting in an excellent qualifying yesterday. Starts inside the top 5, ahead of Max Verstappen, and Lance Stroll showing how on form Aston Martin are here this weekend. Starts from 7th. Charles Leclerc in 8th, ahead of Isaac Hadjar. Nico Hulkenberg rounds out the top 10. Lewis Hamilton just missed out on SQ3 yesterday. He's ahead of Alex Albon in 12th. Then it's Pierre Gasly in 13th, with Gabriel Bortoleto with the weight of a nation on his shoulders is the man, the 21-year-old born in Sao Paulo for Sauber, going from 15th, ahead of Franco Colapinto. Liam Lawson will be 17th, ahead of Esteban Ocon, and Yuki Tsunoda, after a pretty dismal Friday, dismal start to his Sao Paulo Grand Prix weekend. He will start from the pit lane, having crashed in FP1 and been on the back foot ever since. He'll be there though with Carlos Sainz, who qualified last, as Williams look to assess alternative setup options ahead of Grand Prix qualifying later today. To reconfirm then how the Drivers' Championship point standings looks, it's Lando Norris sitting pretty with 357 points to his name, just 1 point clear of Oscar Piastri. Then it's a further 36 points back to Max Verstappen. That's how far he is off Lando Norris. George Russell remains in mathematical contention, but is in fourth, ahead of Charles Leclerc. Over in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren wrapped that one up in Singapore. Ferrari second, they're only a point ahead of Mercedes, who are only 9 points ahead of Red Bull. Williams are fifth, and there's a fierce battle for sixth. 12 points covering Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, Haas and Sauber, with Alpine 10th and last, as they now start to approach the grid, with Lando Norris lining up on the left-hand side, as we will look at it, on the right-hand side as the driver's eye goes. And you can see, Abby, there is definitely a drier side of the grid and damp patches littered throughout.
Definitely, and you can actually see them pulling up to the grid where it is wet on the left-hand side predominantly. They're trying to warm the tyres on the one dry patch they can find, and Oscar was the first one to do that. And I mean, it's going to be really important to get as much tyre temp as possible to make that potential at the start even more.
Points up for grabs today. 8 points for the winner, all the way down to 1 point if you finish in 8th. It is a sprint to the finish. No mandatory pit stops in this one. We'll cover 24 laps of racing. Really important run to turn 1, then downhill left-hander into the centre S's. Lando Norris then in the Papaya McLaren starts on pole. Alongside him, Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. The sprint is on in Sao Paulo as we go racing. Good start from Lando Norris. Kimi Antonelli forced to defend in the middle of his teammate, and Piastri round the outside. Russell diving down the middle, but can't make it work. Norris holds the lead as they now make their way round the Curva Sol. It's Norris from Antonelli, from Piastri, and a good start as well for Max Verstappen, who's just tucked in behind George Russell, up a place to 5th, but all look fairly clean as they now head into the left-hander of turn 4. And there's action further back as well between the Racing Bulls of Liam Lawson and one of the Haas cars. Yeah, lots of jostling there, but actually pretty tidy, especially with these conditions, although there is a yellow flag out now. We'll see if there's an incident going through turn 4 potentially, but that was a bit naughty, I think, squeezing Liam Lawson onto the grass on the entry of T4. Lando Norris then crucially holding the lead. Kimi Antonelli on those soft tyres couldn't quite get the extra grip that they normally provide when it is a bone dry track, so Antonelli forced to cut in behind. It's the yellow flag early on. It was Ollie Behrman initially who was really squeezed by the Sauber of Gabriel Bortoleto in the long straight, the Reto Aposta, down to turn 4, and then he did get hit by the Racing Bulls of Liam Lawson on the exit of 4. Lovely 360 pirouette, not really what you want to do on lap 1, but he did manage to get going again. But unfortunately for the Haas driver, he now plummets to the bottom of the field.
That was a bit naughty, I think, from Liam. I think he got squeezed, was not very happy with what Ollie did. It was on the wet grass, and then I think probably locked up and just went into the side of him into T4. But who has made a brilliant start, actually, is the two Ferraris. Leclerc up to 7th place and Hamilton up to 8th.
Yeah, it's Norris on lap 2, who is not able to shake Antonelli, who is in 2nd. Piastri a little adrift in 3rd, keeping Russell at bay in 4th. Verstappen is 5th. Then it's Alonso, the two Ferraris. Leclerc and Hamilton 7th and 8th, with Stroll losing places at the start. Hulkenberg holds on inside the top 10. Gasly's up to 11th ahead of Albon and Hadjar. Colapinto and Bortoletto round out the top 15. Then comes Lawson in 16th. Ocon is 17th. Behrman, after that spin, is now down to 18th, only ahead of our two pit lane starters, Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz.
It seems at this point of the race, obviously only on lap 2 going on to lap 3, that the soft tyre runners have actually got the advantage at the moment, with Kimi Antonelli keeping within the tracks of Norris and trying to put as much pressure on as possible. But he's looking fairly strong, I would say, and the soft runners are the ones that have been the ones moving forward predominantly, with both the Ferraris as well as Verstappen.
As they head to start lap 3 again, plunging downhill through the left, then out the right of the Senna S's, then it carves round the left-hander of the Curva de Sol. Lando Norris leads, but it's less than a second between him and Kimi Antonelli. DRS is activated. Oscar Piastri closing in on second place man Antonelli. Russell a little adrift in 4th, keeping Verstappen behind. Max Verstappen needs to pick off places here. He needs every point he can get. And Lando Norris, though, doing everything he needs to do right now. Started this weekend 1 point ahead of Oscar Piastri in the Drivers' Championship, with this the penultimate sprint and 4 Grand Prix to go. Little bit of tighter action further back. Alex Albon chasing the back of Pierre Gasly. He's having a better run of late for Alpine. Turn 4 incident involving Liam Lawson and Ollie Behrman. That spin for Behrman causing a collision that has been noted by race control. We'll see if that gets elevated.
I always want to see another angle of it, because with Liam going onto the wet grass, I'm sure it will be that his tyres just weren't in a condition to then make T4. So in reality, he really should have backed out and kind of lived in fight another day, but that wasn't the case.
It is still damp on that start-finish straight, isn't it? They're picking up the spray off the back of the car, so they come through, and then as you plunge downhill into the Senna S, is much dry as you then come down onto the Reto Aposta, the short straight, all the way from turn 3 down to turn 4, DRS zone. Lando Norris now 1.3 seconds ahead of Antonelli, who's just dropped back a bit on that last lap into the clutches of Oscar Piastri. His soft tyre might well wear out quicker than that medium tyre, but in these conditions it's so tricky to see how much tyre temperature you can get. We're having another look now at the start. Lando Norris with a good start from the right side of the grid. Antonelli, bit of wheel spin, and then he tried to come over to the right-hand side and fend off Oscar Piastri, who was forced to take a wider line and then nearly clipped the front end of George Russell on the inside.
It was actually Fernando Alonso that I think was the biggest loser in that. He had the wettest grid box, and his launch looked he got a lot of wheel spin and really struggled to make any progress. He should have really have lost the position to the Ferrari of Charles, but he actually managed to fight him off and keep it, as we're hearing the sound of Lewis Hamilton on board, making up all them positions, going really fierce, pushing his way through past Lance Stroll, following his teammate through.
That Chinese sprint win for Lewis Hamilton seems like a lifetime ago, but from 11th on the grid, he's made his way up to the final points-paying position of 8th. This is the sound of Oscar Piastri, who did have a good start, really feathering the throttle, but had to hold his nerve as Kimi Antonelli really squeezed him in that Mercedes to the outside as you turn left for turn number 1.
Yeah, that was so much wheel spin there for Oscar, but Kimi did a great job to keep his position, as we're seeing a replay now of Liam Lawson.
This kid pushes me in the grass and then says that, well, I don't know where I'm meant to go.
That was Liam Lawson, as we get another look off board at the incident between Liam Lawson and Oliver Behrman. Abby, now you've had another look at it, how do you read it?
Yeah, I think a lot of that was caused because Ollie was pushed wide, actually, a corner before, so he lost all his momentum, had to back out, and then he goes really aggressive to defend from the car behind. And I think it was a bit naughty from Oliver, to be honest, although Liam did make contact with the rear, and it will probably be looked at as he's deemed in the wrong. But I think it was avoidable for both parties, to be honest.
Well, it has been upgraded to under investigation by race control. So once that pops up on our screens with any kind of outcome, we will let you know. Lap 6 of 24 of the Sao Paulo sprint with a damp and dry track. It's Lando Norris who leads, but we got Oscar Piastri in the wall. Coming out of turn 3, the left-hander. He loses the McLaren. He hits the barrier. The man who sits second in the Drivers' Championship finds himself out of the sprint in Sao Paulo. And we've got more cars off. We've got one of the Alpines, and that will be Franco Colapinto along with the Sauber, and I think that's the Gabriel Bortoleto, who's also in the same part of the track as Oscar Piastri. They've clearly found a bit of damp part of the circuit, and they have lost control of their cars. It's a heavy hit for Colapinto. Bortoleto is still going. It's Hulkenberg. It's not Bortoleto, it's Hulkenberg. He's the one involved, and he's managed to get going again, but has sustained damage. Piastri looks like he's out of this one as well. And for the championship, although it's less points up for grabs in a sprint right now, it's going Lando Norris's way. We're going to get another look at it now. Out of the exit of the Senna S's with Oscar Piastri. The front left picks up a bit of curb on the water, and he's a passenger, and that's the sound of the McLaren thudding against the exterior barrier.
It's really peculiar to see as well. It would have been under yellow flag conditions for another 2 cars to make the same mistake, and they're all separate of each other. They're all making the exact same mistake. They've just put a wheel on that curb on the exit of T2, which is the left-hander of turn 3. They ran the curb, which is still holding the water as there's been rain, and just become a passenger, all 3 of them all at once.
Safety car is out. Yeah, it was Nico Hulkenberg who found himself into the barrier all on his own, and then Franco Colapinto with, I think, the heaviest of the crashes. The Argentine driver who has just been signed for 2026. Not how he would have wanted to celebrate his first racing bit of action for this weekend, but isn't that an image that we're looking at right now? It's Lando Norris who leads the way, and in the background his teammate, the stricken Oscar Piastri, who is out of the race, finds himself in the wall, losing crucial points in the championship, and we've got a red flag. A red flag has come out. The race will be halted on lap 7 of 24 with Norris leading, Antonelli second, Russell in third, with Verstappen and Alonso the top 5. Leclerc, Hamilton and Stroll make up the top 8. They are the point scorers, with Gasly and Albon the top 10. Hadjar, Bortoleto, Lawson, Ocon, Behrman the top 15, with Tsunoda, Sainz and Hulkenberg still going. 18th and last, Hulkenberg's made it back to the pits. Out go Piastri and Colapinto.
Norris hit the curb and a lot of water went online.
Well, that's Kimi Antonelli accurately describing what happened. It's that inside curve, isn't it? As you come out of the Senna S and you start to head through the left-hand curve de Sol. We haven't seen what caught out Hulkenberg and Colapinto. I suspect the same thing, although Colapinto looked like to be a lot earlier into his crash than Piastri and Hulkenberg were. But clearly, that is those are the consequences of racing in these kind of conditions. We said this would be a crucial sprint, and a lot to lose for our championship protagonists.
To be honest, I'm not surprised to see the red flag after that, because it was a really big hit for Franco in particular, and there was a lot of barrier damage, so I think it would take a lot of work as the 3 cars all hitting the wall. There's a lot for the marshals to sort, and I think by the time they'd have got it done, it would be almost the race done. So as we hear from Verstappen,
The car is just bouncing everywhere. It's terrible. Can't keep up.
Yeah, okay, we're just going to try and get you through some recommendations for turn 1. Turn 1 looks really poor.
No, it's just wet. I have no grip. It's not
yes,
the balance.
so we are giving you recommendations so that you avoid oversteering into the corner every lap, Max. Whether you take them or not is up to you.
Always fun between Max Verstappen and Gianpiero Lambiase. They do get on very well, which I think is why they talk to each other in that kind of manner. It's a bit like an old married couple. They're not afraid to be honest with each other and say exactly how it is, which is, I think, the key to their successful partnership. But lap 8 has ticked on. We're going to count that, but red flag is out as we collect the cars that include Oscar Piastri and Franco Colapinto and repair the barriers. This is the sound of Oscar Piastri through the right-hander of 2. And then he gets on the curb, the front left, gets on the curb and the white line, carries more moisture, and he just becomes a passenger, loses the rear of the car, he goes into the wall backwards. And that is Oscar Piastri, now 9 points behind his teammate Lando Norris. If Norris goes on to win this sprint, the same thing happened to Nico Hülkenberg. And are we going to see Franco Colapinto? But Nico Hülkenberg actually got away with it, a little lighter tap to the wall. This is the sound of Hülkenberg through the right-hander.
Yeah, it is exactly the same as what happened with Oscar Piastri, and then I imagine Franco's again will look the same. It's quite concerning that, as I said earlier, it's under a yellow flag, but it is also something that is so uncontrollable. You become a passenger, and yeah, we see Franco Colapinto hitting the Armco as well as a tyre barrier, so that will be why there is a red flag. But the course actually goes wide, Franco does, into turn 1, gets a lot of oversteer, touches that same curb in the exact same place as the other two drivers before him, and sees the same fate. But it is a really big hit. The whole of the side pod was ripped off the side of the Alpine, the front left suspension, as we're also seeing pictures of Oscar Piastri, his head in his hands, looking pretty disappointed. But actually, what I think is quite interesting from all of that, Oscar and Franco are out of the sprint, but Nico Hülkenberg has managed to put his car back to the pit lane, and the Sauber mechanics are working tirelessly to try and get that car fixed so you can go enjoying the race when it's restarted.
Yeah, there's a lot of work as the cars now line up in the pit lane, going on the rear end of Nico Hülkenberg's Sauber. Lando Norris is actually out of the car. The red flag out for the barrier repairs. Colapinto's crash was a bit more seismic than Oscar Piastri and Nico Hülkenberg's were, which is a shame for Franco Colapinto. Crashed in Q1 and the Grand Prix last year, and now the sprint for this year. Meanwhile, Piastri records his second consecutive sprint retirement and loses crucial points in this championship battle. Yes, less points, but when you came into this weekend just 1 point behind your teammate, those kind of things you can't afford to do. Is that, Abby? I know it's tough conditions for anybody, but we've seen that before. White lines, curbs carry moisture. So should Oscar Piastri have? Should he have been a bit more cautious?
I think all the drivers are experienced enough to know that the curbs in these conditions, you stay off them. They always are the last things to dry, and when it's mixed conditions, especially the sector that's dried the slowest is the first sector and the end of the last sector. So they should really know to stay off the curbs. If maybe it was a mistake and he was pushed wide and just didn't expect to have fell upon where he was, but from all three of them, it's a silly error to make. Even I know you don't use the curbs in these conditions. Well, at least for Oscar Piastri, he may well have given his mechanics a bit of work to do in the gap between now and qualifying, but hopefully all will go well for him, and then he'll be back in action for more and bigger points on offer for Sunday's Grand Prix. Red flag conditions then here for the Sao Paulo sprint after 3 separate incidents and 2 drivers' races over in the form of Franco Colapinto and Oscar Piastri finding the water that lies in wait, trapped in the curbs on the inside of turn 3, and it was just the lightest of touches, and that confined Piastri and Colapinto to the wall. Norris, Antonelli, Russell, the top 3. Verstappen 4th ahead of Alonso 5th. The 2 Ferraris, Leclerc and Hamilton, in 6th and 7th. Stroll holding on to that final point in 8th, with Gasly and Albon the top 10. Hadjar, Bortoleto, Lawson, Ocon and Behrman the top 15. Tsunoda, Sainz, Hülkenberg, who was also involved in his own separate incident there, but lives to fight another day, and lines up 18th and last. All 3 cars actually having a hit to the rear, so it's always scary when you have a hit to the rear, because it's where the engine and the gearbox lie, and it's where all the delicate bits, let's say, lie. And going into qualifying this afternoon, it's not going to be ideal for them. They're not going to have the opportunity to shake down the car, make sure it's functioning okay. So they've got to hope that nothing internally as well has had more damage than they'd like. It's always a risk, although the mechanics they do an amazing job, and they're at the top level here in Formula 1. It is always that risk you carry when you've had an impact on the rear axle.
fair bit of barrier damage, so the teams will get a 10-minute warning before they go racing again. This is the sound of lap 1, Liam Lawson being squeezed by Behrman. That incident still under investigation as they then went side by side into turn 4, and then front right Racing Bulls makes contact with rear left of Haas, and round goes Behrman. That, I have to say, if Liam Lawson gets punished for that, I think that will be harsh.
I'm not sure I agree.
Really?
I think he was squeezed onto the grass, but they went into the corner side by side and Behrman gave him space, and it was only right at the exit of the corner that Lawson's tyre tagged Behrman's rear tyre. He slides, he understeers, I think, at the apex. Here's Behrman's radio.
It's typical Lawson.
I think that's Lawson's fault, even though I can see that he doesn't feel aggrieved that he was put on the grass on the way to the corner. What do you think, Abby?
I disagree a little bit. The first point of contact was made at the apex. If you see a plume of smoke come from Behrman's front left as this contact, and then when Lawson's backed out of it a bit more, he then makes contact with his rear right. So I do see both sides of it, but I think Ollie solidified his own fate a little bit there. But I think it was... Again, I think it was
Racing
avoidable.
incident?
I think it was avoidable from both parties, for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Well, it's still under investigation, so I'm sure the stewards will be having the exact same conversation at the moment. Red flag conditions here as the rear wing gets taken off of Nico Hulkenberg's Sauber. Now, you are allowed to replace parts, but they have to be like for like under a red flag. The other thing, Andrew, you can do is, and under a red flag, certainly in a Grand Prix as well, you can change free tyre change. What do you do then if you're on lap 8 of 24 of a sprint and you've still got Grand Prix qualifying and a full distance Grand Prix to go?
Well, I think they'll want to put a fresh set of tyres on, fresher set of tyres I should say, not least because, I mean, if you look at they've all done not only the laps from the sprint, but some of them started with the sprint with the Mercedes tyres, for example, were 4 or 5 laps old already, and if you're on a soft tyre, or were on the soft tyre for the first part of the sprint, I can't imagine you're going to want to stay on a 12 lap old soft for the remaining, how many laps is still to go? Quite a lot, 16 laps. So I think, well, they'll all change. I suspect they'll all change tyres. It'll be interesting to see whether they go for the same compound or not, won't it? Obviously, Max Verstappen's not a happy bunny in that Red Bull, so he maybe try something different. But again, at the same time, he needs to make ground, so he might be tempted to go for a soft again to see if he can make a place like he did at the start on the first time. I have to say, we're watching replays of Oscar Piastri's crash. It's easy to say this from sitting in the commentary box with no skill as a racing driver whatsoever, but yeah, it's a basic error that he's made there, putting the inside front wheel on a curb that he knows will be wet because it's been heavy overnight rain. He shouldn't be making those sorts of mistakes, and it's yet another really difficult weekend for him at least the start of it.
I'm going to go back to Kimi Antonelli's radio message, actually, that he said about Lando Norris touching the curb himself and picking up more water and putting it onto the track a bit. And you can see Kimi, from Oscar's onboard, Kimi goes on the track and he still kicks up quite a lot of water. So they've maybe took the same margin, some of the drivers, as they did the lap before, but because the water's been kicked up more, it's had more of an effect potentially. There's definitely, you can tell that Kimi doesn't use too much and there is still a kick of water. So I mean, there is no doubt that all 3 of the drivers that did go off were on the curb, which would have ultimately caused it, but it wouldn't have been helped by the additional water kind of spread across it, as we're also seeing pictures of the rippled curb holding that water. It's the curbs in any racetrack are never flat. They've always got kind of a slope up, and then they have a drop down and a slope up, drop down. In that drop down there's always a bit of puddling, and we're seeing it, yeah, the pictures on all the curves around the track, there's still that standing water.
Colapinto's accident happened, it started 3 corners before, didn't it?
It looked like a rough ride.
Massively wide into turn 1, big oversteer moment. He was offline from that moment on, and he was trying to get back online by cutting turn 3 a little bit sharper, and he paid the price for that. But it just goes to show that he was the last one to make that mistake, but of course. But Abby made a good point about the yellow flags. Obviously, Piastri's crashed. Neither Hulkenberg nor Colapinto should have been taking those sorts of risks in that corner. Yellow flags, there will have been waved yellow flags for a car in the wall. That means that you have to slow down and be prepared to stop, technically. Obviously, it's a race, but so there is some leeway. It's not like driving down the road and seeing an accident. But there's no way you should be crashing when there's already a yellow flag out.
Yeah, it hasn't popped up on our race control screen yet, whether that's been picked up by the stewards.
I mean, it should do. I mean, it's the sort of thing that the drivers, they're already angry, some of them, about what happened with the stewarding in Mexico at the first corner, and then the other incidents later on in the lap involving the Ferrari drivers and Hamilton and Max Verstappen and so on. They might not call this one out in the same way because it's a different thing, and they don't want to dob their mates in the same way, but it's not really acceptable to be doing that.
Race will resume at 11:35 local time. So we have been given the warning, so drivers now making their way back to their cars. Interesting standing start, rolling start.
It'll be a standing start. They like the action in Formula One from a standing start. I mean, also, you made a good point about Colapinto, Harry. That's his third crash in 3 pretty much competitive sessions, third crash in 4 competitive sessions in Interlagos going back to last year. He's just got a new contract with Alpine. But and he might be glad that he has, having done that. I mean, it's obviously not his favourite track, is it?
I don't think so, no. That car looking very tricky to drive either way. But Pierre Gasly in the other Alpine is actually having a fairly good weekend for Alpine, who look confined to finish last in the Constructors. He is currently, Gasly, before the red flag, after the crash, he's made his way up to 9th. So he's only a place away from a point. So Pierre Gasly might be able to pick up a bit of the pieces for Alpine this afternoon. Norris then will resume the lead of the race ahead of Kimi Antonelli. So if Norris can hold on to this sprint win, then we could well see a point swing and Norris open up a 9-point lead if he wins the sprint. The sound of Isaac Hadjar from his race start down in 11th. Decent getaway, but then just absolutely gets swamped by Nico Hülkenberg. It makes contact actually with the front left of Hadjar to rear right of Hülkenberg. They both get away with it, but that was a fast charging Hulk.
It looked a bit there, Abby, didn't it? Like the right hand side of the grid was a bit wetter than the left hand side of the grid, because you mentioned earlier Alonso had a slow start, and there was similar. Hadjar was also on that same side of the grid. He was being passed on the inside by other cars in the same way as the Aston Martin was.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was a bit of a lottery, to be honest, where you picked up, because there were some good spots on the left that weren't as good. There were some good spots on the right that weren't as good. Because I saw the P2 position, so Antonelli's was fairly okay, but I would say Oscar got the most wheel spin out of anyone that I've seen so far. Isaac didn't struggle too much, but didn't make as good of a start as the Ferraris. I think the ones that were the biggest benefactors and picked the right lottery ticket, let's say, was the Ferraris.
That's the voice of the reigning F1 Academy champion Abby Pulling in the commentary box with the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson and myself, Harry Benjamin. If you are just joining us, it's round 21 of 24 here from Interlagos for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix weekend, but we're in the sprint race right now, the penultimate sprint, which has been red flagged after Oscar Piastri and Franco Colapinto crashed out on a damp track on lap 6, coming through the left-hander of turn 4. Lando Norris was leading prior to the stoppage. Kimi Antonelli running second ahead of his Mercedes teammate George Russell. Nico Hülkenberg in the Sauber was another to hit the wall in the same spot, but unlike Piastri and Colapinto, made it back to the pits with damage and is looking to take the restart from right at the back of the pack. So what this does for the championship, there are points awarded, 8 points for the winner if Norris can hold on to the win. Once we get restarted at about 35 minutes past the hour, well, Norris could open up a 9-point lead over Oscar Piastri if he's able to take the sprint win.
And on that point, Harry, just to take a step back and look at the big picture a bit, I'm still reeling a little bit from how much this championship's turned around in the last few races, how much Oscar Piastri has just gone off the boil completely. You know, it's been a whole succession of different situations, but each one of them has knocked him back, and this is just the latest, and it's not going to be easy for him to recover from this. He's got to go qualifying later on, let's not forget.
I mean, it was said about, Oscar, he was like the Iceman. He couldn't make any mistakes at one point. That's what we were all saying, and all of a sudden his last couple of race weekends have been riddled with them, which is, I think, even going back to his junior days in F2 and F3, it's really uncharacteristic of him to be making all these mistakes. So I think it does also go to show that maybe he's not feeling as confident in the car or in himself, or there's something going amiss, maybe, that we're not fully seeing. That's for sure.
Nightmare weekend in Baku with a retirement. P4 following that, 5th following that. Then it was another retirement in the Austin sprint, followed by 5th in the race. Then another DNF in this sprint. He has not been on the podium in over 2 months
since winning the Dutch Grand Prix. Exactly. I mean, so it's actually that's not true. He was 3rd in Monza, wasn't he? But I think it's the mistakes that are sorry, I can't talk. I don't know what's happened to me.
You're so reeling.
Surprise. Exactly. Baku, 3 crashes in one weekend and a jump start. That felt like a one-off. It felt like, he was having some kind of out-of-body experience.
Get it all
or
out
something.
at one go.
Yeah, exactly. And then, though, and Singapore, he was fine in Singapore. He had a bit of fisticuffs at the first corner with Norris, but Norris got blamed for that by McLaren, quite rightly, actually. He was the one who hit the back of Verstappen and sort of catapulted into Piastri, but that meant Norris beat Piastri in that race. Then Austin, the sprint, he made I think it was quite a significant mistake at the start, choosing to cut back as sharp as he did to try and get Norris on the exit of the corner. It's the sort of thing you would do in an open race situation, but when at the start, he should have been aware that there could have been cars on his inside, which there were 2 as it happened, and he hit one of them and then took his teammate out as well. Mexico, he just wasn't on the pace, and now here in Sao Paulo, another mistake. So that's what, 5 mistakes in 4 race weekends. It's really quite remarkable for a guy who looked like he could do no wrong for the first sort of 16 races of the season or whatever it was.
I will say the one positive for Oscar is that it is only the sprint race. I say only, there's still points available, but it isn't as cutthroat as the main Grand Prix, where there's a lot more points on offer. I mean, you want to be winning it all, of course. You want to be ahead of your competitors at any point, but if there's anyone that you want to DNF over the weekend, it would be the sprint, in my opinion.
Just over 3.5 minutes left until we get this restart underway. Still yet to have confirmation from the FIA how they'll run this restart, but we hope, and they normally do, a standing start for the excitement of it. It is interesting. Max Verstappen, we will continue to watch him as well. He'll go from 4th on the restart, having started in 6th, made up a place on the opening lap. If he finishes in 4th, he'll only be 30 points behind Oscar Piastri now for 2nd, and he could well finish higher than that too, with George Russell and the Mercedes of Antonelli next up on the plate.
But Max doesn't care about P2, does he? he wants to be catching Lando. He wants to be gaining points on the top of the championship, which at the moment where he stands, although he's moved forward and he's gone from 6th up to 4th, one of that overtaking Alonso at the start, and then obviously Oscar's DNF and his crash, but he wants to be winning these kind of races. He needs to make up that margin. He's got to outscore the McLarens by 9 points each race weekend to be in the fight going into the final round, and he's not doing that at the moment. The Red Bull just doesn't look competitive, and it doesn't fill you with much hope when he comes into the pit lane saying that the car feel is horrible, the ride is horrible, it's not feeling good. So for the rest of this sprint, I wouldn't expect him to look very competitive, but they need to sort it out for qualifying this afternoon.
Well, still breezy conditions in Sao Paulo. The flags high up on the masts above the pit lane, fluttering in the wind. Air temperature 23.5 degrees, track temp just a tad under 29 degrees. Humidity's dropped slightly to about 69% as the drivers now getting focused, ready for this restart. Will some be more cautious than they were on the initial start? The likes of Lando Norris, if it is a standing start, will he be a little more cautious, or will he treat it in the exact same manner?
He come out after lap 1 leading and was looking like he was in control of the race. I think he would do the exact same as he did before. As they're letting Nico Hülkenberg out, I think, to unlap himself.
Well, he ended up at the front of the pit lane in the queue, so they've decided to send him out now that they've bolted on a new rear wing for him. Let him go round again and then catch up to the back of the pack. The FIA have released the starting order of this race, which will be Norris, Antonelli, Russell, Verstappen, Alonso, Leclerc, Hamilton, Stroll, the top 8. They are your point scorers. So Hülkenberg lives to fight another day after his collision, but sadly he was running inside the top 10, so points now look a little scarce for the German driver.
I was going to say the Sauber mechanics did a brilliant job to get that back out in such a short period of time. What has it been, like 15 minutes. So for them to have got that going, I mean, it was an impact on the front and the back, so there was a lot of work for them. But it just goes to show how hard everyone in this paddock is working. It's obviously not just the drivers, it's a whole team behind them.
It's actually a rolling start. It's going to be a rolling start, so we will not have. I know. Yeah, I like a standing start.
I wanted to see some arms and elbows out going into turn 1 again.
That does change things, though, doesn't it? So it almost provides a little bit of a reprieve for Lando Norris with again a fast charging Kimi Antonelli, who's been on good form so far this weekend. Was Toto Wolff full of praise for him over the radio, and it looks like we've got some medium rubber going on in majority of the cars to get them to the end of this race without Lando Norris, though. He's going to be on the soft this time, so it's roles reversed for the top two. Antonelli, who started the sprint on the soft tyres, now switched to the medium, with Norris going the other way round, but it's soft, medium, medium, medium behind. So Norris on the soft, then Antonelli, Russell, Verstappen 2 also on the medium.
I'm surprised to see so many actually on the soft tyre after qualifying yesterday. A lot of them struggled to get it in a window where it would perform, so for them to have started on the tyre, I was a bit surprised, and now for the likes of Lando to put it on again, I'm surprised. But maybe they found a way after qualifying to get it in a better window, as we're seeing them take to the track now behind the safety car.
Also, Alonso has also changed his mind, so whereas Verstappen's gone from the soft to the medium, Alonso behind him's gone from the medium to the soft, and the Ferraris behind him are on the mediums. He was having to hold off those Ferraris for the first few laps of the race, was managing to do it, but we'll have to see how that plays out. But it is interesting. I'll just check my data to see if I can see what the tyre life is going into before we get to the start.
Thank you very much, Andrew. As they are now back out on track, just behind the safety cars, you say, have been making their way back round for the rolling start. So Lando Norris will effectively take control of it once the safety car peels back into the pits.
Okay, so this is interesting. The top four is pretty even, 6 or 5 laps between medium and soft tyres on Norris, Antonelli, Russell and Verstappen. Alonso's got only 3-lap-old softs, whereas Leclerc and Hamilton's mediums are 8 laps old. So that should give Alonso an advantage to keep at least more of a chance of keeping the Ferraris back.
Fernando Alonso has yet to score in a sprint this season, looking to try and bag some big points for Aston Martin today and tomorrow. They're embroiled in that big fight for 6th in the constructors, where just 12 points cover Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, Haas and Sauber coming into this weekend. So Aston very much hoping to haul themselves back up into the fight. It's not where they want to be. But from Alonso, who will be in 5th, behind Verstappen in 4th, Russell is 3rd, Kimi Antonelli in 2nd, but it's Lando Norris leads the way as they rise over the crest. It'll be Lando Norris in control of the pack now as they line up ready for the rolling start. The sprint in Sao Paulo is about to get underway once more after that red flag. When will Lando Norris put his foot to the floor? And he waits a while, but then he finally goes, and it's a decent start from Norris as we cut across the line, and the sprint race is back on. It's the 2 Mercedes who are fighting. Kimi Antonelli forced to defend his position as Max Verstappen goes deep, locks up a brake and just about controls it and keeps Fernando Alonso behind. But Alonso's going to get the better run out of the Curva de Sol, down the Retro Aposta. It's Norris who leads. Antonelli and Russell still going side by side. Alonso and Verstappen going side by side. The 2 Ferraris going side by side. Verstappen wins out against Alonso, but Alonso cuts back down the inside out of turn 5. Verstappen going toe to toe with him and just about holds on. Brilliant racing from those two. Leclerc ahead of Hamilton behind. Stroll holds on to the top 8 as the Williams of Alex Albon dives down the inside of Pierre Gasly, trying to get ahead of that Alpine and fighting with the Sauber behind too of Gabriel Bortoleto. But it's lap 9 of 24. Norris, Antonelli, Russell, Verstappen, Alonso, the top 5.
Lando Norris leaving it as late as possible, going really slow and backing everyone up. I think he was doing it on purpose to try and make sure chaos ensured behind, which he sure managed to achieve. But Antonelli doing a brilliant job to keep his teammate behind there.
I want a replay of Verstappen and Alonso, please, on that restart. That was absolutely fantastic as we now embark on lap 10. Even the 2 Mercedes, George Russell was really hounding Kimi Antonelli for 2nd place here. No love lost between those two. A few frictious team orders last time out at the Mexican Grand Prix between Antonelli and Russell as race control enabled DRS, the drag reduction system. The rear wing flies open on the back of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton's Ferrari chasing down his teammate Charles Leclerc, who is chasing Fernando Alonso, who is chasing Max Verstappen. They've fallen a little adrift from the front three, but Norris has already built up a 1.2 second gap. It's Norris, Antonelli, Russell, Verstappen, Alonso, the top five, then the two Ferraris, Stroll with the final point in 8th. Only half a second ahead of Gasly, though, who's desperate to score points for Alpine, who haven't scored a point in the last 7 Grand Prix weekends. Albon is 10th ahead of Hadjar, Bortoletto's 12th, then it's Lawson, Ocon, Behrman the top 15, Tsunoda is 16th ahead of Sainz, with Nico Hülkenberg in 18th.
Importantly as well, Lando Norris is already out of that DRS gap, so he's bridged the gap over a second, which isn't allowing Antonelli to open his DRS, although he's pushing very hard. Kimi is going purple in sector 1 this lap, but it's just not quite enough to keep within that margin.
As we start lap 11 of 24 on this restarted Sao Paulo sprint, after we lost one of our championship protagonists, Oscar Piastri, who is confined to the barriers and now to the pit lane. Out of this one, no points scored for Piastri, while his teammate is looking strong and confident out in front, over a second clear of Kimi Antonelli. Just behind them, Charles Leclerc is battling with Fernando Alonso. So Alonso's now fallen back from Verstappen, and he's got the two Ferraris for company behind. Yeah,
he's being absolutely hounded now in his mirrors by the two Ferraris. Leclerc is not letting him get away, and Max is driven away from Fernando quite quickly. So maybe the soft compound not working amazingly for that Aston Martin. He's looking like it's inevitable, I think, for Leclerc to come past, especially if Verstappen manages to get out of the DRS as well.
So the top 8 holding station for now. Norris on that soft, along with Alonso and Stroll in the top 8. They're all on the soft tyre, and Alonso too. Everybody else on that medium tyre. As we tick over to lap 12 of 34 here at the Sao Paulo sprint. We're looking back from Fernando Alonso as he breaks downhill into the centre S's. Lock up from Charles Leclerc behind, which forces Lewis Hamilton and runs deep, does Hamilton. Really poor exit as a result on the exit of the Curva do Sol. Gets the DRS open, but he's left himself vulnerable to Lance Stroll's Aston Martin, but I think he'll hold on to it. Stroll has got his mirrors full with Pierre Gasly in the Alpine behind, who will be desperate to steal that final point away. As we get another look at the start, and we had the two Mercedes going side by side into turn 1, and then a lock-up from the Aston Martin of Alonso going side by side with Verstappen. Verstappen himself makes a mistake. Charles Leclerc nearly had an opportunity to get through on Alonso, but Alonso just about salvaged it. It was all going on behind Lando Norris.
I didn't know where to look at that start. There was action all up and down the grid, and that was all caused by Lando going so late on that restart. But it's calming down a little bit now, and it's looking like everyone's struggling a little bit into turn 1, I think, because the straight is still wet. The tyres are cooling down and getting a surface of water on the top of the tyre. So when they're going into turn 1, they're either getting oversteer whilst they're coming off the brake, or locking up when they're hitting the brake. So it seems really hard to manage at the moment for the drivers.
Alonso's coming out the exit of the centre S's now, keeps a fairly wide berth from the curb on the inside that claimed Oscar Piastri, Franco Colapinto and Nico Hülkenberg too. Hülkenberg's still in this race though, having had that rear wing changed under the red flag. He's 18th and last. Currently, Lando Norris with the fastest lap leads the way, 1.3 seconds ahead of Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes. It's George Russell who completes the top 3. Verstappen not able to make gains on the Mercedes ahead. The battle for 5th is one we're enjoying quite now, but it's Fernando Alonso, which is proving to be a bit of a blockage for the two Ferraris. They cannot find a way through on him. Let's hear though from our race leader.
In general, the wind is getting gustier, especially places like turn 12.
So that's Will Joseph to Lando Norris on the radio there. Wind getting gustier, particularly out of turn 12. That's the left-hander of Jung Sao, which brings you up and over the hill towards the end of the lap.
I think Mercedes have played a smart game here, putting the medium on, because going through this race so far, Antonelli, he didn't manage to stay within the DRS zone, but that gap has stabilised around 1.2 seconds, so he's trying to get out of the dirty air a little bit, manage his tyres, and there's still 12 laps to go. No, sorry, 8 laps to go. That's my math not helping me. 10 laps to go. I'm all over the place. 10 laps to go of this race. So that soft tyre by the end, Lando is going to be really, really struggling to keep that. So maybe by the end we might see a last few laps dash by Kimi to try and take the win.
Fernando Alonso forced to defend coming into the left-hander of turn 4 from Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. Leclerc trying to find a way through, but Alonso sticks that Aston Martin in all the right places. Alonso holds 5th, then Leclerc, Hamilton, Stroll in 8th with Gasly just behind as well. Nice fight in this midfield pack, really. It's encompassing 5 cars here, the 2 Aston Martins, the 2 Ferraris, and the Alpine of Pierre Gasly clinging on for dear life at the back.
No, it's getting really tight here now. The 2 Ferraris breathing down Fernando's neck, and he's been making a few mistakes. It's not looking easy for Fernando, so it's going to be, I think, a matter of time if the Ferraris keep going like this. Again, the tyre advantage potentially with the medium, the soft is going to slowly start going away from him, although we did obviously hear from Benson at the start that he is on a newer soft tyre, so that could help him out.
Charles Leclerc under braking into the left-hander through the centre S's as it plunges downhill. You flick to the right, closes up to the back of Fernando Alonso. Want to line yourself up for the DRS zone out of the Curva del Sol, the left-hander of turn 3, then down the Retro Aposta. Fernando Alonso looks in his left mirror, sees Charles Leclerc, but Leclerc almost has a think about it, but just darts back behind Alonso. Not close enough for Charles Leclerc, but sticks with that Aston Martin. Hamilton following suit, Stroll and Gasly just behind.
It's really hard for them actually, because in this middle sector they're going to be overworking the tyres. They're following Fernando so closely, so by the time they put the hammer down and go up to turn 1 on the exit of turn 12, they're going to be squirming and not getting the best exit that they want. So that attack into turn 1 and the first sector, and then as well into the second DRS zone into turn 4, the gap bridges out a little bit more as the tyre is going away from them a bit.
And getting a good exit once again is Fernando Alonso out through Jingsao, up over the crest once again, down the start finish straight, get another dose of the DRS. Will Charles Leclerc, he'll close up to the back of the Aston Martin. He won't be able to make a move into turn 1.
Just want to cast your minds back a couple of years. Do you remember the 2023 Brazilian Grand Prix where Alonso held off Perez for 15 laps in that dominant Red Bull, and then when he finally got passed by him, overtook him again on the next lap? I'm not sure he's going to do it again against Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, but he's certainly giving it a good go at the moment.
Who could forget that battle as well? And this is important too for Aston Martin. If they can hold on to this, they will reclaim 6th place in the Constructors' Championship, just by a couple of points ahead of Racing Bulls, who will fall down to 7th. Neither Racing Bulls driver Hadjar or Lawson looking to score points yet. Aston Martin looking to do the double, with Stroll still holding on to that final points paying position. It's lap 16 of 24 of the Sao Paulo Sprint. Here's Pierre Gasly's Alpine.
I'll be sure to let him know.
Pierre Gasly, if it wasn't already abundantly clear for both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in the Ferraris ahead, Pierre Gasly wants them to get through on Fernando Alonso.
I don't really know what he expected there saying that. What can his engineer do? I mean, it's very clear that they want to get past, but it's one thing saying it, it's another thing doing it.
This is where you need that team radio proximity chat, isn't it? Under braking, yes. Lock up though from Charles Leclerc. He's pushing hard once again, going downhill into the centre S's. Little bit of a twitch though for Leclerc coming through the left-hander of turn 3 as we cut away to see Esteban Ocon trying to get through on Liam Lawson for 13th. I want to see what's going on down the Retro Aposta and into the braking zone of the left-hander of turn 4. Fernando Alonso and Charles Leclerc still pushing. I think Alonso has survived another onslaught. Esteban Ocon, meanwhile, is going to make the move on Liam Lawson. Turns it into the left-hander. Lawson's already turned one driver around there. Will he turn the other Haas one around? No. Ocon holds the position. So too does Fernando Alonso in 5th, ahead of Leclerc, then Hamilton, Stroll and Gasly, who is staring hungrily at 1 point for Alpine. They sit last in the Constructors' Championship. They have not scored a point in the last 7 Grand Prix. He'll be desperate for that one. Talking about struggles, Lando Norris starting to struggle with his rear tyres. You might have called it, Abby, with the soft tyre versus the medium tyre. I think Kimi Antonelli's an awful lot closer in that Mercedes than he has been in the last couple of laps.
That'll be music to the Mercedes pit walls' ears. That's exactly what I think they kind of expected. I think that's why they went to the the medium tyre, and actually Kimi Antonelli, he's back in the DRS zone, so he can DRS range, so he can now start to get closer, maybe use that medium tyre a bit more in the middle sector where Norris is struggling, and try and get close enough in turn 12 to get the DRS and maybe make an attack into turn 1, who knows.
Last lap around, Kimi Antonelli was half a second quicker than Lando Norris. He is catching him with Russell behind in third. Then comes Max Verstappen all on his own really in fourth, and it's Fernando Alonso who is still at the head of this queue, and the fight for fifth. Leclerc behind, Hamilton, Stroll, Gasly all involved in that. Then Albon comes in 10th place ahead of Bortoletto, Hadjar, Ocon, Behrman, Lawson the top 15, with Tsunoda, Sainz and Hulkenberg the 18 remaining drivers. No Oscar Piastri, the man who sits second in the championship, looks set to find himself 9 points adrift of teammate Lando Norris. If Norris can hold on for the win, Piastri spinning out, having hit a bit of water and finding the wall. And I tell you what, very nearly did Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton and even Lance Stroll find the same fate coming up through Zhengzhou. Just small twitches from all three of those drivers, sticking a tyre onto the white line, onto the curb. That would have sent the heart rate up slightly. Yeah, as the race goes on, you get a bit more confident, you start taking a bit more margin with them curbs, but I think they quickly there got reminded, no, stay away, because they are really unforgiving, especially when there's still that pooled water on them. It's not been long enough really for it to have cleared. It's a really strong sprint so far from Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso. Looked quick yesterday. We were even talking, could Alonso get sprint pole at one point? It went away from him in the end, but certainly Aston Martin coming here this weekend and looking a lot more competitive than they have done in the last couple of races. Alonso 7 seconds adrift from Verstappen, very much holding on with these soft tyres. Can he keep them in check all the way to the end? Lando Norris, the race leader on the soft tyres, has been complaining about his rear grip, but he's actually managed to edge Kimi Antonelli back a little bit more. He's got himself out of DRS range as we come across the line for lap 20 of 24. Norris leads by just over a second to Mercedes of Kimi Antonelli. Then it's Russell, then Verstappen. Then there's a bit of a gap before we see Fernando Alonso emerge down and then up over the crest that leads you towards turn 1, the centre S's, as you ride the roller coaster of cambered corners and blind crests here at this Interlagos circuit. Lando's doing a really good job of managing this race so far, because he's not on the preferred tyre at this point in the race, but he's keeping that gap quite even with Kimi. Kimi's struggling. The closer he gets, the more he'll be struggling with the tyre, although he has just gained 4 tenths in that first sector alone, which we haven't seen him do since a couple laps ago. So potentially now this is going to be an opportunity. 6 tenths behind going in through the middle sector, going into the last sector, he's going to have the DRS and potentially be closer going into turn 1. This is the sound of Kimi Antonelli, the 19-year-old from Bologna, the youngest pole sitter, the third youngest podium sitter in Formula One history. Will be a Mercedes driver next year alongside George Russell, chasing down Lando Norris as we head back onto the start-finish straight. He is within, certainly looks within DRS zone. He's less than half a second away. Under braking into the downhill, turn 1 through the centre S's, really closes up through the middle of the corner. Can he get a good exit out through the Curva de Sol and onto the Reto Aposta with the aid of DRS? The rear wing flies open, it'll aid his straight line speed. George Russell watches on from behind, but that Lando Norris and McLaren good on the straight there into the braking zone of turns 4. Norris holds on. The next opportunity will be coming out of Zhengzhou and back onto the start-finish straight, unless Antonelli can get close and dive down the inside. Antonelli, nothing to lose. Norris, it all to lose. Lando ran a little bit wide there as well in turn 1, but then he got a better exit because of that. So there's 2 different approaches in line. There was a big margin taken out of the gap into turn 1. The Mercedes, Kimi Antonelli at the wheel, really pushing to try and take this sprint win. Well, the rain very much holding off, having greeted us in the early hours and overnight, leaving us with a damp track, which was still damp when we took the race starts 21 laps ago. However, not damp enough for intermediate tyres, but certainly tricky. It claimed Oscar Piastri's McLaren. with a bit of water on the curb, and all it took was the smallest of wheels touching that, and into the wall he went through the left-hander of turn 3. That is where we find Lando Norris, the remaining McLaren, and Kimi Antonelli too. Meanwhile, down into turn 1, Charles Leclerc gets oh so close to the back of Fernando Alonso, who locks up, coming downhill into the centre S's. That allows Leclerc to tuck in behind. Can he get a better exit? Through the curb de Sol we go. Leclerc will get the aid of DRS. This is as close as Leclerc has looked in a while now. Closing onto the back of the green Aston Martin car. Leclerc to the inside at turn 4 through the left-hander. We can't see it. They've cut away. Will it happen or not? It certainly looked like that move was on, and I think it's happened. Leclerc looks like he's got through for 5th place on Fernando Alonso, but we're looking at Lando Norris versus Kimi Antonelli. It continues to stay Norris ahead of Antonelli, but Alonso is still fighting with Charles Leclerc, but I think Leclerc might well have done it. Finally, he was right alongside him going into the left-hander of turn 4. And if I'm going to believe the timing screen, he is ahead.
That was quite frustrating. We saw the start of it, didn't see the end. It was, it looked like deal done though. He had a really good run coming out of turn 3, and it going into the braking zone of turn 4. Leclerc had the confidence, and then it cut away, and we didn't see the rest. But it's that'll be a sigh of relief for Charles there, because he's been looking to make that move for the last 10 laps.
I'll tell you what we haven't seen either. Pierre Gasly has got Lance Stroll. He's up inside the points. Kimi Antonelli still continues to chase down Lando Norris. The soft tyres, have they run out of road? Because Fernando Alonso is now keeping his old sparring partner Lewis Hamilton behind him. Hamilton though through the curve de Sol, not as close as Leclerc was last time around, and Hamilton's running out of time to do this. We're lap 23 of 24. Alonso has proven a staunch defence as he has a little bit of a moment coming through the left-hander of turn 4 and just nearly has to catch the Aston Martin from sliding into the wall. That allows Hamilton to catch up. Meanwhile, battle for the lead is going to go down to the wire here for the Sao Paulo sprint. Lando Norris has had a cracking start to the weekend. He's got the advantage of his teammate and championship rival being out of the sprint and picking up 0 points, but he'll want to score the maximum. Kimi Antonelli desperate to take that away from him. The rookie with nothing to lose against the experience of Norris with it all to lose, as we dive on the final lap downhill through the centre S's. Important corner coming up. Traction out of the left-hander of turn 3. Hit the button for the DRS. He does so, does Antonelli. The speed increases. The gap closes down towards turn 4, but it's not enough.
Never quite close enough going into turn 4 there for Kimi. The gap is constantly fluctuating. It's so hard when you're within that 1 second. You get a lot of dirt here, and especially around this circuit. It's one of the shortest circuits on the calendar, but it's also one of the busiest, that you're constantly working at the wheel and you want as much downforce as possible. As we see Isaac Hadjar battling with the Alpine.
I think it's Alex Albon's Williams, and I think he's got damage, and Bortoleto, there's been some sort of contact there. Yellow flag is out. One of the Williams cars was carrying a front wing underneath its car, so the boy from Brazil plummets to the bottom of the pack. So Bortoleto's sprint not going the way the grandstands would like it. Meanwhile, out in front with just the straight to go, it's been superb from Lando Norris, who has fended off Kimi Antonelli. He eases off under the yellow flag. That's how this race is going to end. But Lando Norris will see the checkered flag and takes the Sao Paulo sprint and extends his lead in the Drivers' Championship. Kimi Antonelli gets second ahead of his teammate George Russell, Max Verstappen in 4th, and Charles Leclerc, after laps behind Fernando Alonso, managed to pip him in the closing stages. Alonso, courtesy of the yellow flag, aiding him, will help solidify 6th ahead of Hamilton. Pierre Gasly returns to the points. Alpine score their first point in 7 Grand Prix with 8th place. Stroll misses out. Hadjar the top 10 with Ocon, Behrman, Lawson, Tsunoda and Sainz, and it's a big crash for Kimi Antonelli, for Gabriel Bortoleto. It's a big crash going into the centre S's. He said he's okay on the radio. The medical car is there waiting for him, but it's a big crash. We haven't seen it, but it looked like it involved Bortoleto hitting the barriers there. So the race ending under double yellow flags.
Yeah, that looks like a scary one. I don't think there was one corner of the car still intact there. So I think, as you say, it was with the Williams that had the damage of Alex Albon. So it looks like they have potentially come together, battling going into turn 1. And Gabriel Bortoleto has actually hit the outside barrier. Although we've not seen it yet, we can see where the impact was.
Thought we were going to hear from Lando Norris there. We're not, and we're getting a look at what's left of the Sauber.
There's not much of it, is it?
The front gone, the rear gone, the crash structure doing its job though, and we're about to see what happens. So Gabriel Bortoleto is chasing Alex Albon in the Williams up and over the hill, down towards the start-finish straight, and closing in on the Williams. We're about to go across the line now. Albon is a fair length ahead. Does Bortoleto try anything?
Oh, wow.
And that was Bortoleto, who wasn't exactly making a move, but as soon as he moved to the middle of the track and hit the brakes, round went the car.
His steering wheel's fallen off as well, so that would have taken him by massive surprise. So what's happened there is he's went to try and overtake and brake as late as possible. He's braked on a wet patch and the rears have locked and he's become a passenger. He's definitely braked on a wet patch, become a passenger, and it pivoted on him straight away.
I'll tell you what, and Alex Albon, who was turning into the left-hander, would have just got a face full of carbon fibre as the Sauber pretty much just slammed across the front end. It actually didn't make contact with Albon, but the front wing of the Sauber, as it hit the inside left wall, gets lodged underneath the Williams. So Gabriel Bortoleto, the main damage is done to the inside left wall as you turn in for the first of the centre S's. Then he flips across the track, across Alex Albon, and it's like an aeroplane crash straight into the tyre barrier, which absorbs all the velocity of the crash, which is what it's supposed to do, springs him back out into the runoff area. Bortoleto has been on the radio, he said he's okay, but that is a mighty crash for the home hero, and it's the second impact that effectively breaks the steering column, Abby, and the steering wheel flies off.
Yeah, I've not seen a crash like that in a while. That was pretty spectacular, as you say, hitting the inside barrier because of it. It definitely was locking the rears on a wet patch, and then hitting the inside barrier, hitting the outside barrier. That car is in pieces, and I'll be amazed, to be honest, if they get that out for qualifying later this afternoon, which is not great for the home hero.
Well, what a start to Saturday, and we've still got qualifying to come as well. The Sao Paulo Sprint is done and dusted, won by Lando Norris, who extends his gap in the championship to Oscar Piastri, a 9-point swing for Lando Norris, with Oscar Piastri picking up nothing. Max Verstappen closes in on Oscar Piastri as well, 30 points behind him, courtesy of finishing in 4th. Good for the two Mercedes. Antonelli was trying his best at the end there to try and nick the win, maybe forced Norris into a mistake, but ultimately run out of laps to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't fault Lando on the soft tyre taking that to the end of this race, although it is only a sprint, so it's not as many laps, but you could see he was struggling and Kimi was trying his hardest, but just that dirty air made it quite hard for Kimi to make any ground.
Charles Leclerc then 5th. He did manage to get ahead of Fernando Alonso, and even with they just miss out. Fernando Alonso is 6th. Aston Martin now draw level with Racing Bulls, 72 points apiece, but on countback Racing Bulls have the podium courtesy of Isaac Hadjar and Zandvoort, so they're ahead at the moment, but it's still positive for Aston Martin, who picked up points only with Fernando Alonso. Lewis Hamilton behind. Pierre Gasly got the final point at 8th. Gasly's been on a bit of a mission so far this weekend. He's actually looked quite good from the off.
Yeah, well, he said in FP1 that the car just feels great, and I don't really know why, because it's not felt like this all year.
And it shouldn't feel this great.
Yeah, so maybe just Brazil and Alpine have a good thing going. Obviously, They had a double podium last year. Who knows? You never know around Interlagos. Anything can happen.
3rd career sprint win. 2nd all-time on the list now, behind Max Verstappen when it comes to sprint wins, with 13, but let's hear from our winner talking to James Hinchcliffe.
Both like 8 and 9.
And the drivers down here just talking to each other about the difficult conditions, joined by your top 3 in the sprint race. First here with your winner, Lando Norris. Lando, you said yesterday after qualifying, if I could cruise to a victory, that would be beautiful. It didn't really look like a cruise, but just talk to us about how difficult it was to judge the grip in those first few laps.
It was tough. Yeah, it was tough. Makes the win a little bit more rewarding when you have a race like this. So, especially with Kimi here, he was certainly not making my life easy. But it's one of those ones where you have to push because you know the guy behind is going to try and push a little bit more. But it was sketchy. I had a couple little lifts. But even with the wind, it was tricky. With the degradation on the tires was difficult. So definitely not an easy race, but probably the race you expect here in Brazil, always a difficult one.
with the red flag and the tire change, you were saying that the softs maybe weren't actually the tire to be on at the end. Whose decision was that to make the switch during the red?
Who said that? I didn't say that.
You didn't? Oh, no, sorry. Nobody said that. No. How were the tires at the end?
Yeah, I mean, it was a struggle. Of course, the softs at the beginning, I expected to be better. But, I mean, the Mercedes were quick, and Kimi kept me under pressure the whole race. So I just expected us to be a little bit better, and we weren't. I don't know how much is down to the tires or just that they did a good job and they were quick today. So we got some homework to do before quali.
Yeah, fair enough. But Mercedes was very quick today. Second, Kimi Antonelli, congratulations. Just how much fun was it out there, battling first with George on that restart and then pushing Lando for the win late?
Yeah, it was a very fun race. It was a very tricky condition, especially at the beginning. But we tried to keep the pressure on Lando, and just came short. But third eye was quite big, and wind was picking up during the race, so it was struggle, but was a fun race.
It was a great result yesterday in qualifying. You said afterwards that if it wasn't for a little mistake, maybe in turn 10, you could have fought for pole. After this result, knowing about what you learned yesterday, how confident are you going into the GP qualifying?
Oh, definitely. The confidence is high, but the field is so tight. At the end, yesterday was really hard to put the lap together, and I believe everyone did a few little mistakes. So we'll see today. What we can do, but hopefully we can achieve the same result or even better.
All right, George, P3. I know it's only sprint points, but you guys are locked in such a tight battle with Ferrari, with them struggling, both of you guys up here. How critical is it to capitalize on these opportunities for the constructors?
Yeah, I mean, it was a good race for us both. Kimi did a great job and obviously put Lando under a bit of pressure. And P2, P3 was a really good result, but we need to try and do the same again this afternoon. Qualifying so tight, and it's very difficult to overtake at the moment, so that's going to be key.
Was there a bit of relief that it ended up being dry and not wet, so you guys could learn a little bit more for the Grand Prix tomorrow?
No, I mean, it's so different when you're doing the qualifying laps versus the consecutive. There's a lot of tyre degradation there. So at the end, it was a bit difficult, and I think Lando was struggling. But no, we feel good. The temperatures are cool, and we know that's how we like it. So let's see what we can do later.
All right, Lando, you said a little bit of homework to do before qualifying this afternoon, but are you confident that you and Oscar can both be fighting for pole?
I'm confident we can do that. I think our quali pace was good, but the wind changed a lot today. The conditions are quite different, so today's different to yesterday. Tomorrow's going to be another day, but they're going to put us under pressure, I'm sure. So, like they said, small gaps, and you got to do some perfect laps.
All right, well, your day's not done, job's not over, but congratulations, Lando Norris, Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, 1, 2, 3 in the sprint race.
The day is not yet done, indeed. James Hinchcliffe asking the questions there. To your top three from the sprint. Lando Norris winning it, extends his lead in the championship by 9 points. With Grand Prix qualifying to come, you can join us for that here on Sports Extra 2 at about 5 to 6 this evening. Ahead of that, hopefully getting away at 6 o'clock. But what a start to Sprint Saturday, and Lando Norris then on good footing for the rest of this Sao Paulo Grand Prix weekend. Join us a little later. Thanks to Andrew, thanks to Abby. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.